Charles wasting absolutely no time saying this was the guy who Donald Trump went to. They had that kind of relationship. I'm going to read a couple of more back and forth between Susan Hoffinger and Michael Cohen. Were you at any time part of the general counsel's office? No, ma'am. Why not? It was not part of the discussion when I joined Trump Org. So just for Mr. Trump. Just Mr. Trump. And then later, during the time you worked there for Mr. Trump, how often would you say you met with him or spoke to him? Every single day, multiple times a day. This is in the first couple of minutes of testimony.
This is exactly what I expected to see, and I expect that we're going to see more of this. They are going to essentially tell a story that in many respects serves as a character arc, almost to get to the point where the relationship being what it is, where Michael Cohen is completely invested. He is Donald Trump's right-hand man. You have to paint that picture so that you understand how close they are. At some point, however, Chris, this is going to shift. And Michael Cohen is going to testify about when the relationship soured, and he's going to testify about how things went bad.
But before we go there,
sure.
Not just testify that you had that relationship with Mr. Trump, but it is kind of an explanation for why there may be pieces of this puzzle that only he knows.
Absolutely. Michael Cohen is the witness that is going to connect all of the prosecution's dots and then make all of the documents that are truly the star witness in this case make sense. In order to do that successfully, you have to establish, look, he's the guy who was on the phone with Donald Trump, in the room with Donald Trump, doing the things with Donald Trump all of the time in such a way that draws Donald Trump much closer to what's alleged in this indictment than we have seen or heard from any of the other witnesses. All of the other witnesses, by design, by Donald Trump's design, have been a step away from Donald Trump. And in order to actually convict him, you're going to have to bring Donald Trump one step closer. Michael Cohen is that step.
And Michael Cohen has already, in less than a half hour of testimony, talked about how he was involved in all kinds of things related to Donald Trump, his business, and even his family, whether it was dealing with an accident involving a taxi cab because of Michael Cohen's connection to taxi cabs, whether it was calling on an issue about his apartment that had a flood problem and dealing with that, whether it was something to deal with Trump University or Miss USA pageant. And all this while, Trump is sitting in the courtroom, we're reporting, with his eyes closed, his mouth slightly open. It appears he's trying to kind of shut out the testimony that he's hearing from Michael Cohen, while Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, is listening very closely, taking notes, obviously preparing his cross-examination and looking for those openings. Let me read you more about the relationship. It says, Hoffinger asks, did you need an appointment to meet in his office, Trump's office? Cohen says no. Cohen, Mr. Trump had an open door policy. Cohen, I would walk right in. Hoffinger, when you met with Mr. Trump at the Trump Org in his office, did you generally record those meetings in your calendar? Cohen, no, ma'am. Hoffinger, did you feel you needed to keep him up to date? Cohen, yes, it was actually required. Kristen, what do you think they're trying to establish here with Michael Cohen?
They're laying that foundation to show that Cohen was not just a fixer, but he was Trump's right-hand man. And that is why Trump trusted him to conceal those hush money payments. And even further, right, which is what the prosecution needs to prove, to conceal it. Right, conceal as reimbursement for legal expenses. Why? Well, so that he could have the higher edge with regard to the election. To hide that story, conceal it, so that it didn't come out and mess up any reputational benefits that Trump had with regard to the election. But it's showing that he's the fixer and the right-hand man shows that he can be trusted. And then, like Charles said, pointing out all of the corroborative evidence, both through documentary evidence as well as testimony, can show that, yes, he may be a convicted liar. Yes, he may have some disparaging parts of his reputation that could undermine his credibility. But he does have a lot of corroborating evidence to support what he is here to do, which is prove that crucial element of the prosecution's case.
Michael Cohen is saying now that this was kind of like a family, a big family. We know this was a family business, right? He said it was an amazing experience in many different ways, establishing what we all know, that for a very long time, Michael Cohen absolutely adored Donald Trump. He was the ultimate sycophant. He said, I enjoyed the responsibility that was given to me. I enjoyed working with my colleagues at the Trump Organization, the Trump children. It was a big family. Did you at times lie for him? Michael Cohen, I did. Why did you do that? It's what was needed to accomplish the task. Here is a guy who's acknowledging very early on what, frankly, many witnesses have already set up, right? That this was a guy who was going to do what needed to get done as long as Donald Trump was happy.
You know, this is showing that level of intimacy he had, because we already heard a line of cross-examination is, you know, did Michael Cohen actually work for the campaign? No, he didn't. Well, he didn't work for the campaign because, as we just heard now, I work for Donald Trump. And again, that intimacy, that connection, that tightness, I'm doing things for Donald Trump because that's my job. I'm that fixer. I'm that person who has that really tight relationship with him. There's no incentive for me other than to look good for the former president, and I keep on using that term time and time again, for Donald Trump, who was not the president at the time. But now you understand the path and you understand how we're getting to where we are, and everything. Go ahead.
But, yes, I was going to say, but if you're the fixer, is part of your job to keep his hands clean? Is what we're going to hear potentially from the defense, and could it be in the minds of jurors? Well, that's exactly what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to fix, take care of things, and give, if not just plausible deniability, but deniability to the boss, as he called him.
Well, certainly he wanted to give deniability to the boss, and he wanted to separate his issues from the boss, and it was going to be borne upon him, and he's paying for it. Financially, he's spending the dollars. He's arranging with the shell companies. He's arranging with the bankers. He's speaking to David Pecker and Dylan and Howard Dillon at the Inquirer.
But to the point that Donald Trump didn't know the details.
I think that's a really major sort of jump for, I think, even a jury to be devoid of common sense, to think that this man, on his own, solely for being the goodness of his heart, for wanting to be with Donald Trump, is spending that kind of money and spending that kind of time for what? Is it proof beyond a reasonable doubt? At the end of the day, that's a separate question. But I think common sense and the evidence says he was doing it for Donald Trump.
You know, to that point, I think that you have to follow the timeline and then think about how much sense that's going to make. Could it be that Michael Cohen decided to take it upon himself and set all of this up and put these things in motion in order to protect Donald Trump? Yes. Could it be that Michael Cohen decided somehow that he was going to pay over in excess of $130,000 of his own money, take out a line of credit in order to do so, to pay and cover this up? Yes. But at the point that Donald Trump decides, I'm going to now pay you back for those expenses, and most importantly, at the point that I am now going to mischaracterize what that payment is in my books and my ledgers, now I am now committing a crime, and that's what the prosecution will need to focus on. Even, Chris, to your point, I do think it's something that you should expect the defense to do, to say, look, Michael Cohen was acting on his own volition. Michael Cohen was a man enamored with Donald Trump and would do anything to please him. All of that is fine, well and good, but at the point that you have now paid him back for these expenses and then mischaracterized them within your own budget codes, now you're guilty.